This is Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series discussing a brand new theatrical work called Frankenstein A.I, a modern play adaptation based on the 19th century novel by Mary Shelley. In this podcast series, we thought it would be interesting to discuss the stories and themes expressed in Frankenstein A.I. in greater detail, to not only deepen and enrich yours and our understanding, but for the sheer pleasure of it. Throughout the series, we'll talk with special guests and discuss things such as the morality and ethics around creating artificial general intelligence, whether AGI can be considered a friend or foe, hazard or tool, the value and quality of human relationships, transhumanism and what it means to be human, as well as the tensions between a creator and the created. What makes our podcast unique is that you'll also get an insider's look at the many artistic and production decisions that are made in putting together a theatrical production as we develop this original work. So sit back and settle in for a stimulating dive into deep ideas and the world of theater magic. And we're back for episode 3 of the Telling the Story podcast. I'm your host, Charlie. I'm joined by 2 guests today. One is a returning guest, is George Dutch, the playwright of the new theatrical work, Frankenstein A.I. George studied acting at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver with internationally renowned theater director Gundus Kalik during the 70s. He then joined Kalik's ensemble in Northern Australia for 5 years, where he taught a performance class in a university theater program during the 80s. George facilitates drama therapy groups for years, in addition to performing in and providing dramaturgy for many productions. George recently provided dramaturgical and editorial support for the creation of Ninth Hour's very own audio drama, Beauty Will Save the World. Welcome back, George.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm happy to be here again.
And I'm joined by a special guest, CARE Baldwin. CARE grew up with a born desire to entertain. Her parents' background in family and television and film production, combined with her early entry in dance, vocal, and piano lessons, fueled that passion. And as she grew older, CARE is a talented performing artist, a real triple threat. And in my opinion, and has been involved with Ninth Hour Theatre Company, both on stage and behind the scenes, since 2010, our first show, in fact. CARE has worked for CHARLEY FM radio, based in Ottawa, since 2006, initiating promotional campaigns and partnerships, as well as hosting the Drive with CARE afternoon radio show, weekly afternoons from 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock. Welcome, CARE.
Thanks, Charlie.
So excited to have you for this discussion.
I know, that's good. You and I have these conversations all the time.
All the time.
Just talking about life and people and arts. And so it's just great to be in this space with George too. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's a kind of a nice reunion of sorts for us. And today we're here to talk about artificial intelligence, helper or hazard, friend or foe. So, let's dig in, George. I'm going to start with you. You've said this on past episodes, the dirty, dull, and dangerous jobs that AI could help humanity with and lift our burdens and perhaps make it safer for humans to not die in workplace accidents and all sorts of other things. Do you have some thoughts around that? Do you want to expand further? Where did you first hear that? Did you think about that in writing the play? Give us some of your initial thoughts.
Yes, I definitely did think about it when writing the play. AI's been around for a while now. We've all seen videos of robots working in warehouses, for example. We're all familiar with Siri and Alexa and other forms of AI. So yes, it was on my mind. And so yes, it can be a help. My concern is that we don't seem to have a choice. It's being foisted on us. It's non-consensual in a sense, and we're adapting to AI more quickly than AI is adapting to us, I think. And I think there's some hazard in that maybe we can discuss in more detail.
Yeah. Well, and I think you brought up an interesting point already about consent. It's not often talked about, is it? technology is interesting. There's so many things in society as we walk around, as we, as you go to your job, whatever you need to do to survive. A lot of it often can feel non-consensual, but it's part of that code of living in a society sometimes, right? And sometimes those things might go too far. And there's variations on consent, right? Bodily autonomy, of course, and then it just, based, just decisions in the workplace, just like small things as well. And things sometimes you just have to go along with to sort of keep your job or just make everyone happy around you. But when it comes to the use of technology and AI, like we just sort of accept things lazily sometimes because it is more convenient. It can come across as helpful.
Let me give you a specific example.
Yeah.
I used ChatGPT in writing my play. This adaptation of Frankenstein.
You have to if you're doing a Frankenstein A.I.
Oh, yeah.
So did ChatGPT write the play, or did
no,
you?
it didn't write the play, but it certainly assisted me in writing the play.
Okay.
It helped me with research. It helped me to clarify things in the plot and the characters after I read the book, because I didn't feel like I could take the time to fully analyze the book in the same way I would if I was doing a university course and I was writing a serious paper.
Right.
I wanted shortcuts.
Right.
And that's what AI gave me. It gave me those shortcuts, the convenience of a shortcut.
Right.
In terms of, I think, making the play better. Certainly allowing me to write it more quickly, this adaptation. So I think that there is where it can be a help.
It was a useful tool.
It was a useful tool.
And you chose to use it.
I chose to use it, and I found it useful, and I continue to use it.
Okay.
My concern is that while I'm doing that, how much of my critical thinking how much of my creativity, how much of my motivation is being usurped by the technology. That's a concern for me. Like AI, ChatGPT is very good at manipulating language. We talk about AI's large language models. It's very good at manipulating language and symbols, which are the building blocks of a lot of creative enterprises, including writing a play or an adaptation of a play. So how much is it replacing my ability or de-skilling me in those areas because of the convenience factor that it can do it much more quickly and in some ways more effectively?
And especially over time. Like if you used it for 10 years in a row, what does that do?
We've done this for, like, let's say radio contests, and you're like, let's try to find a clever name for the contest, but using alliteration. And rather than sitting and taking the time to brainstorm and look up a thesaurus and come up with words, you just ask ChatGPT, give me 10 ideas of a catchy name that uses alliteration that summarizes, movie night tickets for you and your partner, whatever. Right. And like, there you go. You've got it. You pick the best one. You're done.
It's a time saver, right? You have a lot of things to do in the day.
But you're not exercising your mind.
Right.
I mean, how many times do you think about senior citizens? Like, oh, this breaks my heart. But when my grandmother, she's not with us anymore, but I remember there was this time in her much older age where, living on her own in an apartment, we would go in to visit her and we would find her literally sitting on a chair, just staring at the wall.
Oh.
And we're like, do a crossword puzzle, do a word search, like watch TV even. Like, but if you're not exercising your brain,
keeping it active.
Right. Then you're going to lose it. It's, atrophy or whatever. So, yeah, I totally understand that, George. It's minimizing our ability if we're just relying on others to do it.
No, that's interesting. And just hearing you guys describe it too. I mean, I wrote a play and didn't use AI at all in writing it. And interestingly, I took great pleasure in looking at things up in a thesaurus and coming up with rhyming. And I didn't get any help other than a thesaurus. And it was enjoyable. And like coming up with alliteration was pleasurable. Like it was actually really satisfying to like know that you came up with that. There's a divine feeling in being creative.
You would have been just as happy to have other people in the room to think of those ideas rather than using a computer, for example.
Totally. Collaboration.
So there's a collaboration component you wouldn't get, right?
And it wasn't dull activity. You were enjoying it. Right?
I was enjoying it.
But do you use it to compose an email or or use it for note-taking at meetings or preparing a slide for a presentation?
Yeah.
The kinds of dull, boring things that we have to do in our jobs are quickly and easily replaced by AI tools.
Is there a risk of underqualified or barely qualified at all people being in jobs who couldn't normally do the job, but with AI they can do the job? I mean, do you get what I mean by that?
I've heard a story recently of a guy who got a job working, with machinery,
Yeah.
who lied on his resume that he knew how to use their machinery. And
Oh.
he just learned as his, like, in the first few days of his job, he learned how to do it. Now, thank God he didn't die or lose a limb. But I think people fake it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you learn
Yeah.
Excel? You need to know Excel to work here. Well, it's not hard to just be like, ChatGPT, what do I need to know about Excel?
Right,
Or
right.
build a spreadsheet.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
And we're all familiar with
And
like
populate the spreadsheet.
Exactly.
you know what? You know how we have like verbs now for like, oh, I'm going to YouTube that, or I'm going to Google that.
I'm gonna
It's so
ChatGPT
common
that.
in our speech now. Like it's been around for what, 20 years now at
Good
least.
point.
Google and YouTube. What's going to be the new like way of saying things? I'm going to chat GPT that. That's a mouthful.
That's long, yeah.
I'm going to GPT that. Nah, that doesn't even come out well. Like, I'm going to AI that. Maybe. I mean, to coin a term, a verb. Yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. And so these are jobs. So we're talking about dull, dirty, and dangerous. I suppose, George, you make a great point that, reading an entire book, reading a bunch of books about a book or reading about all the research that other people have done about something. I mean, it's very time consuming and could be dull. So that and there's lots of other jobs that could be easily be dull, right? Like even lots of them. There's just lots that we can think of.
And not just dull, and I don't want to hop around too much, but not just dull, but time consuming, which you touched on too. But in radio, as an example, there are so many tools out there that are amazing at creating commercials. Like you could literally say, okay, the client is an HVAC company. They want to do a commercial that's 15 seconds. They want it to be really targeted towards being comfortable in your own home and use words like reliable and local.
Right.
And use a voice that's very, warm but female, and then put this type of music underneath. And literally you in like minutes, there you go. You've got a commercial.
Wow.
And it sounds great.
But you've taken a job away from a composer and from a voice actor and from a marketing person.
That's the debate.
Yeah.
That's the debate.
But you've saved money. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one that that's what we're trying to navigate here.
Yeah, I bet.
In that space. Yeah.
I bet. And we're going to get into that later in the discussion for sure. And we want to definitely talk about the use of AI in radio and media and entertainment. And we want to talk about creativity and in general, and the human spirit to create and imagine and perhaps and the use of AI in the arts generally, and what would that even look like? And I can't wait to dig into some of those topics. What do both of you think, using your imagination or even what exists today, some ways that an automated, machine and with an artificial intelligence for a specific task, what are some ways you think that could help humanity on a grand scale like that is not there right now? Like, what's again, it being technology being a tool and useful to help humanity. In what ways do you know that exists today or that could exist?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think we have to be careful in terms of thinking about it, the way that you frame the question.
Mm-hmm.
AI proposes to solve problems basically that don't exist. For example, it doesn't have a solution for climate change or world hunger or world poverty.
Right.
Right. It's being foisted on us because it is a profit center. It will reduce costs for certain employers, increase profits for other employers.
But that's not what people just say.
They don't say that.
They claim it'll help humanity. They're not, they're not like, we're doing this because we want to make money.
Right, that it will solve climate change, but nobody has shown me how it's going to do that or even discuss it. But there's no doubt that it can replace certain forms of labor very quickly and easily and save employers a lot of money.
Right.
And in some cases, that would be a benefit to humanity when the jobs are dull, dangerous, or dirty, for example.
Because we're only doing them out of necessity until some technology can do them for us.
Right.
I go back to my dishwasher example again, like a beautiful tool that or even the clothes washer, like the idea of having to wash your clothes all by hand, which people did for thousands and thousands of years. But what a great invention that I'm sure most people enjoy having in their house. Right.
So it makes that kind of labor disposable, right? But AI has the potential to make humans disposable.
Oh, yeah.
And to go back to the creative question, can AI create beautiful art? Well, AI can do anything that it can by scraping the internet. So if you put up images of all the greatest artistic masterpieces in the world, it's AI is capable of scraping the internet for those images and creating a new composition that simulates or mirrors a Rembrandt or a Van Gogh,
and it might even move you.
And it might even move you. Right. So is that a hazard or a help?
We're going to get into that one later too. And I guess CARE, I want to ask you too, like, in what ways do you believe yourself or hear other people talking about maybe, or read about online, that what are some of the promises of AI, true or not, that would make people's lives happier and, like less lonely or whatever? Have you heard any stories? Or
when you say the promises, I obviously think of like, Musk's Neuralink, where like you're supposed to have these brain implants,
right,
that will, maybe keep your brain young with like electromagnetic, whatever, or like maybe implant ideas or memories, or like,
right.
I feel like that, but again, what it's trying to do is it's trying to solve a problem of humanity and connection and loneliness and,
right.
And I mean, maybe
depression,
maybe memory loss, but like, now we're playing God, and that's a whole other conversation.
Right,
but
right.
It's like there are things that our body is going to do, and now we're fighting against the nature of what our bodies do. And instead of educating and encouraging to build human connection and relationship and get out of your house and find a community, you're now saying, "Don't worry, you'll never have to do that because we're gonna feed it to you through this technology, which, by the way, will cost you your entire livelihood."
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've heard some things about that.
I think that what you're getting at there is that what AI does, it's a kind of a bad religion in a way.
Yeah.
Religion in a way, because it worships the self, right? It allows the individual, it equips the self or the individual to be self-sufficient, to be autonomous, to be independent, making it basically non-relational.
Yeah.
You don't have a need for other human beings.
That's right. And a big part of that too that we're missing, because we're not actually getting to the root of any problem. This is a Band-Aid, right?
Yeah.
We're not actually solving any issues.
Yeah,
here.
you don't have to work through any of your pain, of your problems, right?
But also, like, are we not created to procreate? Like, if we're not having other human connections, then our civilization will no longer reproduce because we're not connecting in that way.
Certainly not naturally.
Right.
I'm sure they could
and like,
come up with ways.
And you can make the defense that, these, AGI, you can have two like droids fall in love with each other. Well, they're programmed to maybe, but they can't procreate. So like there is something missing in the future of humanity if we're taking that part away. I think.
That comes up in George's play, the idea of the artificial general intelligence android, Adam I, is one of its kind, and it seeks out from its creator a partner. And it notices that it doesn't have that, and it causes a lot of havoc in the story. It
did in the original story too.
Yeah, that's
Frankenstein seeks a mate or a bride.
Frankenstein's creature, right? The monster. Yeah. So yeah, it's quite the it's very interesting. Yeah.
I think what it's causing us to do, we think that we're training the AI to be more like us, but I think it's actually causing us to be more adapted by it in a sense, right? Because now we're starting to shift what matters.
Yeah.
Like you said, getting to the root of problems. Well, that doesn't matter because I can still do that. Like, I feel like, we're being adapted.
Flip a switch and not have to work through that pain.
We can outsource it.
Yeah, we can outsource it.
We're being conditioned by AI in a sense.
And technology in general, perhaps, as well. Like our screens, are all sorts of that. Like, I just noticed in my own life, I think back to like 20 years ago and now, and I'm like, gee, I am on a screen a lot now for almost everything, and you remember how you used to occupy yourself like before screens or before all that. You said something so interesting, CARE, and it sort of came up a bit in our workshop development. So we actually stood around in a circle, the performing artists, and each of them took on a stage in human life. It was just an exercise. And without any further instructions, the artist, like, so the first artist, if you could just picture people in a line or in a circle, the first artist is taking on being an infant, a helpless, dependent infant. Then we had a toddler, and then we had a child, an adolescent, a teenager, a college student, a midlife, worker, et cetera, et cetera. Well, without any further instruction, but perhaps it was the context of the workshop in developing George's play, Frankenstein A.I. As the people got older, their sort of performative depictions of these stages of life were fascinating, and we spent so much more time on this exercise because it revealed so many things we didn't even think about. And so as the stages of life got further and further along, people became more machine-like, just naturally. And they weren't even trying to present that evolution. They were just like, the actors themselves sort of observed this as part of the human condition, that for many of us adults, we lose childlike nature, whether it be our childlike faith. We lose our ability to trust. We lose our curiosity, our creative spirit, our playfulness, our hopes, our dreams, our wonders. And then so like the final, like, last couple of artists that were depicting stages of life, one was like physically hunched over, like typing on a computer with like a dead look in their eyes. And then sort of like, basically, and we sort of talked about them becoming like the computer, or having so much more in common with their computer than a fellow human being. And then you look over at the other side of the artists over there playing like the children and stuff, and you're just delighted, and you suddenly are sitting there grieving, because that is most people, unfortunately. At least that's my observation. The cares of the world like steal your joy and all sorts of things, and it's hard, isn't it, guys? Like, it's hard to stay playful, have a childlike trust in God and all these things. It's very hard.
I mean, like you said, children know that they need other people.
Yeah.
There's an innate, like they're dependent on other people. We don't actually lose that. Like you said, we just drift away from it, but it's still part of our nature to depend on other people. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Why are we trying to get rid of that? Why are we trying to say,
I don't know.
Right? Like, you don't need people. You got
I
this.
don't know.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a matter of opinion.
We
But
see it as weakness. Yeah.
I can just make a plug for podcast listeners, by the way. This exercise you're talking about, like, this is what I love about the work of Ninth Hour from a theater, stage, ensemble, theater, workshopping kind of perspective. Every show that you guys have ever worked on, those are the kinds of things you do with your actors. And it's so cool. Just like, you almost need a separate podcast for like theater people. So just like, here's some exercises you can do.
Yeah.
So hopefully some people who are listening will get a chance to experience that.
Maybe I could jump in there. And one of the things I've been thinking about, like, there's a transition between scenes, right? And ever since we did that exercise where we saw these different stages of human development, it's been sticking in my mind. And I've been thinking about how we might marry that with the stages of development of AI. So going from a camera to a smartphone, to a server robot, to a social robot, to an autonomous android, like the different stages of human development. We are going through stages of technological development or AI development.
Right.
And that might be a way of emphasizing how close these two things are merging.
Right.
Because that's a strong theme.
The gap is closing.
That's right. Yeah. Strong theme in the play.
And I like what you said. Like, we all think we're going to make AI more like us. But I think it's a fair observation. Again, who is making the AI? Are they in touch with their own humanity, the creators of the AIs, of the proposed AGIs that are down the pipe? Or are we going to be made more in its image, whether gradually or not? I think that's an important question. Like, in whose image is the AI being made? And is the AI going to be made more in our, like, humanity's, the best of humanity's image? Or are we going to be more machine-like in who we become, as in more disconnected with our bodies, with our emotions, with each other?
I think that's a very important question, because the way that AI is developing now, it has the potential to erode the glue that holds societies together, especially the hard work, as you were saying, of relationship building, and serving each other with basically self-sacrificing love, right? And that means leaving the weakest or the least of us behind. And I know we're going to talk about that more in future podcasts. but it's something that we need to be aware of, that only the strong will survive, only the ones that get on board with this agenda of replacing us or succeeding us with this android species, this super intelligent being. These are scary ideas that need to be talked about, investigated, explored, probed.
And certainly opposite of the Christian, of what people are called to be when they're Christians, which is to care about the weak and the poor. In fact, do that only and you'll be doing well. Like if that's all you cared about, you'd be living a sort of Christ-like example, I suppose, right? So it's like almost calling us to be, like you pointed out, Care, more individualistic, more, we don't need anybody to, and therefore I'm not going to help anybody. I don't want to need anybody and I don't want to have to be needed by anybody. Like the double whammy, right? And disconnected relationally as a result.
There is a fulfillment that we get when we help someone and when we see something that we care about and try to solve it. If we're just entering that code into a program and then that's taking care of it and we just sit back or move on to the next, are we ever really feeling that fulfillment? Not in the same way. You might feel a sense of pride and accomplishment because you helped solve a problem.
Yeah.
But is there a love and a care? You're not giving the person you're helping actual genuine love and connection. It's like you're just handing them money. Really. Like, here, this will help fix it.
Band-Aid.
Yeah, it's Band-Aid. The Band-Aid thing again. Yeah.
Yeah. And before we move on to another big topic in this same vein of AI being a helper or hazard, friend or foe, I just wanted to come back to there's a family in George's play, the DeLacy family. They're also in the book, and they enjoy living off the grid and working hard. And there's this great scene where they describe the feeling of sweat pouring, of sweating, of aching bones at the end of a hard day's work. And I think it's sort of interesting, especially if we live in cities. There's like laboring to get your meal that night or whatever. We've lost a lot of that for sure. And of course, I'm not necessarily complaining about that, but there is a loss perhaps of humanity, being in touch with the earth, being in touch with your body when everything is automated and provided for you like easily with the press of a button. And you don't even need to go out of your house to meet up with a friend. You feel satisfied connecting with them over social media, and you did your relational work that day, but you didn't look someone in the eyes, over a coffee or whatever. There's something interesting about that, and I brought it up earlier, right? I really enjoyed like rhyming and alliteration and looking words up in a thesaurus. Like it's so enjoyable. And writing music is so enjoyable. And I couldn't imagine, even if AI could do those things, as a creative person, I enjoy being creative. So I wouldn't want to give those things up in that realm. And the satisfaction of hard work and critical thinking, as you were pointing out, George, like if you just sort of let AI do all the research, all the work for you, and you do that for years over time, or AI is going to write all your emails at work, what's going to happen to your ability to just be a good communicator and be a good critical thinker? So yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but I mean, I wanted to point out the DeLacy family from your play because it highlights something interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, it highlights this contrast between technology and a technological way of living and a more natural way of living. There's a podcaster called Paul Kingsnorth that has this whole theory around that we're living in this age of the machine, and that we're becoming these machines because we're replacing nature with technology. And in order to build a future, fulfill an ancient human dream of where we can become gods. And so there's this nexus of power and wealth and ideology and technology that he talks about in some detail that comes together, that merges to replace nature with technology.
That's such an ancient drive to become God, to replace God, to have a God, to reject a God over here and then have a new one over there.
And that was part of the popularity of the original book, Frankenstein, which was published in 1818, was this relationship between creator and the creation. And what's the responsibility of the creator for its creation and so on.
Yeah.
It's an enduring theme in the arts.
Like what did Victor Frankenstein unleash into the world? both in the book and in your play, right?
And then doesn't take responsibility for what he's done, and is haunted by that.
Mm-hmm.
I just visually, I think about like Abraham back when, there was no light pollution. When God says, I will give you the descendants as many as there are stars in the sky. And he's literally looking up and it's like, you can see them all, but you can't really.
Right.
It's what you can, but so much more than what we can see when you talk about being in the city.
Yeah.
We don't have that same connection
I think I
with
can
our
see
creator.
like four stars.
When on a special night. So there's that disconnect from our creator, but then also the fact that when they started introducing this James Hub telescope, or is that yeah. And people were like, Christians especially were like, oh, but now you're trying to see more. And it's like, okay, you can be upset that we're trying to see more, or you can just be encouraged and reminded, like, it is in our desire to have answers and to know more and to seek more. And so I think
people were upset that we wanted to see more and we wanted to know more. I think
it's more that like science and technology now, we need, science and faith don't mix, and how it's like, we need facts to prove there's no God. Well, it's not
such a false dichotomy that science and faith don't mix.
I know, exactly. Because if anything,
like theology and science are both means to discover what is true and real.
And seeing these amazing photos and images of what our eye will never get to see is amazing, because it's so much bigger than we realize and we'll never fully know. And so it's that longing desire for us to always need to know and want to seek answers. So it's almost important for our again, I don't say humanity, but it's important for us to not just have all the answers handed to us available at our fingertips. Like part of who we are, and all the way back to Abraham, was literally like trying to understand and seek and discover and have questions. And
curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Knowing what you don't know, learning, growing, rethinking what you believe to be true based on new discoveries, based on new information.
And we're always discovering, getting my kids in the backyard. It's like, we're always discovering new things. So I love that this family, like you said, they're a little bit more off the grid, because it's discovering in nature. We learn so much from nature.
And just taking the time to wonder and be amazed by the creation around them, rather than trying to control it and turn it to some other purpose, usually a commercial purpose, which is, necessary, of course. They cut down trees to make their firewood, right? They have a garden and so on. I mean, it's not like technology doesn't exist for them. It's just a different form of technology put to a different purpose.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with finding a bug and then going on to Google and learning more about the bug.
Yeah.
And what does that teach us about God or about nature or about, life? And, but yes, going out there and opening your eyes is the first thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't want to lose that.
Mm-hmm. And back to what you're saying of needing each other, dependency and stuff, the family in George's play, they do need each other and support each other and love each other, but it's hard because their aged father has health issues, and they often sacrifice for him. And so the AI comes in, spoiler alert, but it's interesting to talk about. The AI comes in and doesn't understand why they would like keep him alive, like what a waste, and like logically, and like, I could just become your new father, like I could replace him, and I would give you everything you needed, make you comfortable and safe and all these things. And of course, like, why wouldn't someone want to be comfortable and safe and secure? But they flat out reject that offer, of course. And the AI just doesn't seem to know what to do. And, chaos ensues.
Well, not of course, but in this, it's nice that they do reject the offer.
Right. But I don't know how many people would, right? Like, oh,
that's
sweet, this thing's come along. It's going to I don't have to work ever again. My life's going to be so comfortable, so safe, so secure. I think people value comfort and safety almost more than anything else in my experience. Yeah. Yeah. Moving on, Care, to talking about AI as, or even artificial general intelligence even, but certainly AI as it is today, because there's a lot of AI out there, and there's even more now than I feel like there was 6 months ago. Something's really like quick about it all. And and you work in the radio industry, and media and entertainment, like it's like thrust upon you. It's like you're probably getting like things all the time hitting you with like, use this will help you. This will save you money, save you time, save you all sorts of stuff. Help her or hazard, friend or foe. Can you just share with us some of your experiences in the radio industry as a radio host too? You are listening to Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. We'll return in a moment with the rest of our discussion.
Ninth Hour Theatre Company presents Beauty Will Save the World, a brand new musical audio drama for the whole family. Embark on a seafaring adventure and thought-provoking cautionary tale about the importance of passing on beauty to the younger generation, where relationships once lost are found again, when tested to choose what they stand for and who they will stand with.
Beauty will save the world! I've felt it! I've lived it!
Laughter, action, and tears, reminding us about the sacred things that make life worth living. To listen to full episodes or exclusive behind-the-scenes content, go to beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
I want to more than just survive. I want to hope and feel alive. I want to live, truly live.
beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
And now, back to the discussion. Some of your experiences in the radio industry, as a radio host too, and all that. Yeah.
I mean, from a marketing perspective,
Yeah.
it's not new to have AI. I mean,
Okay.
even just the tools like Google Ads is AI. When you're on a website and there's a pop-up ad and it's got a little, Google ad in the corner, that's been around for years already. And
Right.
what that is a marketing company has essentially taken money from a business, entered a code to say, hey, I want it to display on websites around this part of the country about this theme, blah, blah, blah. And they enter this coding and then it's just automatic. Their money is spent. And then, so like that kind of use of AI, it has been around for actually quite a long time. I think what we're seeing a lot more of now is the part that scares people. And that's the deceiving part when it comes to talent. Because I think the tools are there. I talked already about producing commercials,
Right.
and you can create jingles, and yes, there's people who can do that for you, but it's hard to get exactly what you want.
It is.
Or affordability, and honestly, in a lot of cases, still you're gonna get what you pay for. If you're gonna go for free AI, you can sometimes tell it's not as good, right? So like, there's that side of things.
Mm-hmm.
There was a radio station in Sydney, Australia, that actually had a fake DJ.
Yes.
For 6 months, and nobody noticed.
We've been looking up at this. Nobody noticed it was a fake DJ for 6 months.
Nobody knew for 6 months that this was a fake DJ, and it started to come out, and people were really upset, obviously, because they were deceived,
right?
Because they were fooled, and so it's actually caused a lot of conversation around the legislation of like, okay, now we need to start like actually putting legislation around AI labeling, and letting people know when it's being used. So this radio station,
we're way behind in legislation. We're barely catching up with social media and all that. Like we're just so far behind in our society's response to how quickly technology develops.
Well, and this station literally said that like we have no legal obligation to say what we were doing, and for them, their words were, we are trying out different AI tools to try to enhance listener experience.
And they're trying it out on the public.
I'm like, enhance listener experience? Like, you just proved that people were mad at you because... So I don't know exactly like how many more listeners they had with that versus before. I don't know the answers to that. But I do know that a lot of voice actors are saying like, we need rules around this because you are taking jobs away. I mean, think about especially like, the minority groups, like there's not that like, I heard someone give an example of like visible ethnic females, like Asian females. How many Asian females are in radio?
Yeah, I don't know.
Not that many. And so if there's a bunch that are looking for work and now you've minimized the opportunity,
right,
then there's even more people who actually like have a desire and a love and an interest to do this for a living that don't have a place to do it.
There's competing drives here, really. Again, like the AI voice of that DJ, and there's some other examples I've stumbled upon. There was an AI podcast that realized they were AI. Again, they're like, it was funny. I kind of laughed when I first heard it. I laughed because it was like, so the producers came in today, guys, and they told us we're not real, we're fake. And to me, I just thought it was really funny because I was like, I don't know, is this staged? Like, come on, like, how could that possibly be? Like, it's hilarious. Like,
that's what I thought when I heard it the first time. I thought it was actors, being
funny.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
parody.
Which is freaky.
Yeah.
Because you're like, now you're starting to think that they do have emotion and how
Exactly.
But the thing is
that's what they're programmed to make us think and believe.
They can respond in a way where there's like empathy.
Yes.
But the reality is okay, maybe in my opinion, AI in radio, a DJ, because in this one in Sydney, they actually took the voice, they cloned the voice of one of their like finance guys, and turned him into a radio DJ.
Right, because I was going to say like the AI voice has to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
like someone's voice somewhere, or many voices combined is making this voice. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And what was remarkable about that video was the natural banter.
Yes.
Like the voices were overlapping, cutting each other off. Like it was the most natural kind of conversation.
Yeah.
That's why I was fooled right away.
Yeah.
So this time last year, I was at there's an annual Christian broadcasters conference.
Oh, okay.
Canadian and American and mostly the US, just there's more Christian radio stations there.
Right.
Came together. And last year, there was like at least 3 workshops or main sessions about the topic of AI.
Okay.
It's sort of like how when radio people get together, one of our main topics is podcasting. Because it's like, okay, we got to work on this. How do we do it? How do we do it? And now with AI, it's like, okay, we got to know what's going on in our industry.
How are we going to use it?
How are we going to use it?
When and where?
So one of the workshops I was at was talking about these tools to use for production, like I mentioned. There was talk, but literally they played side by side, like, is this AI or human? And
oh my gosh.
Even radio broadcasters could not tell the difference.
Really?
But what's interesting is there's a radio station, and I thought this was kind of clever. There's a station in the States somewhere where they have very deliberately announced that this is an AI newsreader.
Sure.
Or they'll say, like, there's a girl who does a show and her name is Amanda, and she'll literally have real Amanda and AI Amanda. And she'll let AI Amanda do news headlines and weather. And so in a way, it's kind of like a gimmick.
Yes. I was thinking about that. It's a gimmicky. The deception thing is weird. Like that's sort of, but if you do know it's AI and you listen to that station every day, what life problem is it solving? Like it's super gimmicky.
It's very gimmicky.
Yeah.
And I think
like the new phone that just came out type of gimmicky.
Yeah, exactly. How long will that last?
Yeah.
The trend. The thing that with radio, because radio continues to actually grow as a medium. Believe it or not, it's been around for so long, but it's not going anywhere.
Interesting.
People can fake humor with AI. You can fake interesting, but you can't fake heart, and you can't fake local and relevant. Because even if you're a voice tracker, which means that you're sitting in your basement maybe, and you're recording your breaks for a radio show that gets put in, and you're not actually in the studio. You can have a 4-hour radio show and take 15 minutes, depending on the format, to record it, drop in where those little talking breaks go, and you're not even there.
Right.
Well, you're still missing that, like, this happened right now. It's raining outside. Did you feel that shake?
Yeah.
Like, there's things like that make it relevant.
Yeah.
But I think with AI, you'll never have that. And I think people will be able to see through it. But also, the reason radio is still strong is because it's local and it's relevant, and people want a human connection. When you're a lonely person,
your listeners especially, I mean, they've come to hear your voice over years and feel like they know you.
And that's the thing. You see me at an event.
Yes,
it's like a
that's
connection,
also true.
Or like someone who's maybe a shut-in and they don't leave their house much. They have a connection with a person that they know is live and right there.
A real person. Yeah. And when your radio station, you have so much, you guys freely and openly promote and talk about faith and spirituality, and there's another layer there too. Like, and how do you, like, if you're going to offer a prayer for someone, I mean, you're going to just hit the AI button and AI is going to pray for someone? It just, something seems off about that, right? I mean,
and even if you, like you said, even if you did know that it was not real, I think there's, going back to the longing we have as humans, I think if I knew that this computer, whatever, voice, friend that I'm chatting with, quote unquote, is offering, lovely feel-good thoughts and condolences or whatever, I would still deep down know that it's not coming from a true place. And that to me would leave a void.
Yeah.
Like,
me too.
Like, it might be nice and all, but like,
comforting
don't you
words.
want to actually be loved? Not just loved by something that was programmed to love you?
Yes. To me, the distinction is, and I even wrote lyrics to a song, and a friend listened to it, and they said, if you want what's truly sacred, like, so I wrote initially lyrics, I want to feel understood. And my friend was like, well, wouldn't it be more truly sacred if you want the peak human experience, is to be understood, not to feel like you're understood.
That's good. Yeah.
And there's a sort of interesting, as you just pointed out, like, I feel good, because, the AI friend said all the right things and it picked your day up and you do feel good, but it's not real. That's programmed to be your friend.
Yeah.
That radio host is programmed,
versus they actually genuinely care about me. And they can, radio stations can have AI that answers phones and can give a very warm response.
Oh yeah.
So like you said, if a listener was to call and say, hey, I need prayer about this, then there could be an automatic response that offers prayer. But again, then you still.
But can it substitute a human being, like a reporter on the site of some natural disaster, right? Or some major
safety,
calamity?
I'm sure.
And when you watch these broadcasts where there are reporters on the scene of a major crime or calamity or disaster, what's the first thing they ask the victims? How do you feel about that, right? And what they're hoping for is that big emotional moment where that person breaks down and shows real emotion.
And they get it.
And because that's what the audience is hungry for, is that empathy, that connection with another human being at their deepest level of grief or sorrow or joy, right? What machine can replace that?
Yeah. Yeah. And it might be safer to send, a report. But like you said, like, I want to know that I'm not the only one going through this stuff.
Yeah.
I want to know that the struggles that I face, the grief that
I'm not
alone.
We talked about it on the last episode for sure, like this idea of like I've been through similar pain, like real empathy. Like I've got skin in the game.
Yeah.
I too lost a parent. I too know the pain of losing a child, infertility, all these things. Whereas a machine can only be programmed to appear to have the empathy. It doesn't have that. It doesn't have a womb. It doesn't have all these things. It doesn't have a mother. In any natural way or whatever. So it's a fascinating distinction, but in George and I, in our experience in conversations, and we want to humanize and personify machines really badly. So I feel like we almost need to. It's an interesting observation I'm making. We can't help ourselves, but you mean
to anthropomorphize or project feelings onto the machine?
Like I think it's sad. And it's like forgetting that it's like an actor really performing sadness well, and actors are quote unquote deceiving audiences all the time. The audience is in on it, obviously, but a good actor, I've said it before and I'll say it again, a good actor makes an audience feel that you're going through those emotions for real and for the first time, even though you've performed it already for 20 performances. So it's super fascinating in that realm. But
as you're talking, you're reminding me of that video that one of our 9th Hour members sent us about a robot in South Korea that committed suicide by throwing itself down the stairs, and the whole nation went into mourning for this machine.
Right. But my observation of it, it was very fascinating that they're ascribing to the machine motivation, like it committed suicide, which is an intention. How do they know that? Was there a letter left behind? Again, it threw itself down the stairs. That's very human language. Did it do that, or did it fall down the stairs? Did it malfunction? Like we're ascribing to it motivation.
Yeah, I hope so. Or maybe it's just a South Korean form of satire and we're missing the humor or something like that. Because that was a very bizarre video. A very bizarre story.
It really was. Wow. Yeah. But
I don't like the idea, because even if that was okay, we've developed this AI and we're going to project these feelings on it, blah, blah, and it's a test and it's a tool. They're experimenting. I don't think we have the right to use these tools to experiment on people and emotion, like
deceiving people. Yeah. Like the test is to deceive people.
Which is what this radio station was literally doing. They're saying, well, there's no legal obligation. We were trying to test this out. We wanted to see, and that's probably why people were mad. Is like you were using us to try to improve your your income, your money goes back to what's the motivation behind it. So,
And what do you think in the radio industry for sure? Like, is the motivation? I mean, is it simply money saving? I mean, I think
a lot of times it is. I don't think there's that many people begging to get into radio. So I do think in terms of like an on-air announcer, there's fewer people. I think in terms of producers, voice actors, I think there's still plenty out there that don't want to lose their job. It always comes down to the heart for me. It's like you can't in the moment be relevant and actually care.
Your name.
If you're not, if you're not a human, if you're not there. So yeah, to me, I don't think that can ever replace radio. Sorry, I forget what your question was.
No.
Well, let's hope that people don't stop desiring the heart or wanting to have the heart.
Yeah. I think you can get that through like Spotify. Like I think if you just want like music and some stuff in between, like you can find that. And I think maybe there'll be more of that for the people who do just want to set it and forget it. But I think there's always going to be, because we're human, going back down to that root, we're always going to long for connection. And for so many people, radio is that. It's like you were right. I'm right in your car with you, you know?
Yeah. And on top of it, your station provides a faith connection, people feeling like they're part of a greater, something bigger than themselves, a greater community at large.
Please don't fake like preaching. Like, I mean, like you can. Like the AI can.
We saw an article about that, like an AI sermon, and we were like, "Oh my!" And it was it was really good. Apparently,
it's good. I'm sure. I mean, it's like you're taking the Bible and you're applying it to some stories you can find on the internet and making. You know what I mean? Like, fine, but yeah, like you said, if we're longing for connection and we're looking for encouragement in our faith, then the last thing we want to do is take away the human part of that. But
yeah, it's almost like an AI could certainly do better at a lot of things, which is a big argument that people make. There is, again, what do you value? Do you value quality or the nature of it? Like the nature of what you're getting. There's a quality in that that's hard to define. Like, as you pointed out, the human connection, the heart is hard to define. Like that's a particular nature of something. That's a quality it's not a numbers game, you know, heart, you know? So yeah, no, it's what about like media? What about like
graphic design and stuff?
Well, what about like entertainment at large, like movies and television? I mean, and we're going to talk about live performance art in a few minutes, but because I think that's a different can of worms. But anything that's like on a screen, anything that's like been recorded, anything that you experience through technology, and a lot of that can come down to music, graphic art, again, radio, television, movies. It's all experienced through a device, I would say. That's easier for AI to really probably have a real say, to take over.
It's hard to know the difference sometimes, but I think, I don't know, again, I think because people still believe in the authenticity of some of this, I don't have a problem with maybe interworking both. I mean, we've always used, not always, but special effects and CGI and overdubbing, like that stuff's like,
right.
So I don't think it's all wrong.
Right.
I think it can certainly enhance the experience, but you know, what was the actor? Was it Star Wars? No, what was the actor who was like, I'm going to give public domain, or not public domain, but like they gave the right to their voice to be essentially used for eternity.
Oh, I don't know.
For their voice, because they didn't want, I think it was the Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Where it was like, this is the voice of Darth Vader. So for the end
James Earl Jones.
Was it? Did he pass?
He's died.
So I think that's what it was then, because I think he had given his voice, the rights to his voice, to Disney, whatever, who owns Star Wars now, right? So to literally say, for as long as you're making Star Wars movies, I am the voice of Darth Vader. So you never have to like switch it up. Now, again, for some people who are just such huge fans of Star Wars, they probably love that. They're like, great. But for that to just be done anytime, it's sort of like you said, it's like, now what? Now you're taking away the role for the next generation of Darth Vaders, or you're like, I think there's a whole debate that can happen there, and it's hard because I don't know if I have a strong opinion on it.
Yeah,
I like the idea of let's at least have some parts that are real, because I don't like looking at something and going, I know that that's all fake. So I'm like,
yeah, like not, yeah. And I had a great conversation with a friend about this, like, you know, like let's take a painting here. It's printed off and it's in front of us. Yeah. And I don't tell you anything, and you're moved by it, or you find, wow, how creative. Oh, that's so interesting. See the little girl with the kite in the corner. I didn't notice that till now. Such a detailed nuance. Like it really communicates deeply to me, and you know, etc. Like you're moved by it. Then I tell you, AI created it. Wow. Huh? I mean, that's interesting. That like visual art and music can totally be curated from other sources, and I'm
no longer connected to the artist now.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
the creator. I might like the creation, but I don't know. I no longer feel a connection to the creator.
Exactly. And that brings me to our final topic. Leo Tolstoy, a Russian author who wrote War and Peace, believed that art is fundamentally about communicating feelings from the artist to the viewer. He argued that art should be a means of conveying emotions and moral values rather than simply producing beauty or entertainment. He critiqued what he considered to be counterfeit art, which he would describe as anything that was like gimmicky or elitist in nature and that would lack a focus on universal human experience. He talked as well in his book about sort of like the everyman, the average person being able to connect with the art instead of bourgeois values or luxury beliefs are what generates the art. I think a lot of what passes for art today can sometimes be what's popular in the moment. I think that's the kind of art he would criticize, that it's giving the elites what they want to hear, what they want to see. It isn't challenging the status quo. It isn't raising questions about who we are as humanity and how we're failing. And he argues that's not art. Even though it would get widely acclaimed critically and promoted and sell and get lots of money from it, he describes it as not art because it doesn't it doesn't get down to the universal human experience. And he can gimmicky, it's gimmicky, it's counterfeit, it's he uses different words, but I've never heard what I've sort of felt all along in my life be described before in such a way. I've had lots of conversations with people over the years, obviously, because I'm an artist. What is art? What does it mean to be an artist? And I'm always kind of disappointed in the answers, where a lot of people, it's like, well, everything is art and anyone can be an artist. Now we're all artists and stuff. And it's sort of that, therefore you kind of just conclude that no one's an artist and nothing's art, because if everyone is and everything's art, then how could you define art anymore? So Leo Tolstoy's definition about art, and you brought it up, Care. I mean, you literally already brought it up without me even referring to this, but it's conveying of emotions and moral values from one person to another, or from many people to many others. The creation of the art is a transmission of feelings of pain, of elation, of joy, which are all things truly felt by the people who created the art, the people who are delivering and performing the art, and the people who are receiving the art. I mean, obviously, as an artist, you can't help how something's received, and you can't help people's response to your art. But generally, there's a response to the art, whether it's good or bad, but there's a response nonetheless. And you brought it up that going back to the painting example, like I showed you a painting in the room, and then I told you it's AI. There's a disappointment slightly because you're now disconnected. But if I told you this painting was painted by this old woman in some poor,
she lived in a mountain
village, living in a mountain.
And
it's a true story. And she sold her last shoe to finish the painting. I mean, suddenly there's a story behind it. At least for me, if I go to art galleries, knowing the story behind the painting or the artist themselves is almost more interesting than the art. I find it connects me to the art, and I think it's like that with music and all sorts of stuff. Theater is live, of course. So, what are you going to do? Like, I guess you could put on an AI theater play. I don't know if we're there yet in technology, but, and of course there's holograms and other things, but theater is like raw. It's in the room. It's live. It's there in that room. The spit is flying in the air. The tears are coming on people's faces. The laughs are heard. There, the sweat, the beads of sweat are seen on the actors' faces.
And you said before, the emotion is fresh, even though you've done it 100 times already. The reality is, though, and this is why we love live theater, is that sometimes the emotion is different.
Yeah.
And if it was all just programmed, there's no room for adapting, going over here. Yeah.
Or spontaneity.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everything you're saying, it warms my heart because it really, to me, and in the field that I'm in, it really points to that what I do as a radio announcer is art.
Yeah.
Because there's a story, there's a connection, it's authentic, it's now, it's here, it's communicating emotion. Like it really is
creative.
It's an art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Were you going to say something? Yeah.
I was just going to say, if we go back to the example of the painting that's been created by AI,
Mhm.
is it art or is it an illustration of something? And to me, I don't have any problem if somebody looks at that painting, whether it's generated by AI or not. But if that painting reveals the inner life of that thing that has been painted, whatever that thing is, if it somehow evokes the inner life of that thing, the inner life of things, art tries to get at that, what's really there, not just that surface picture.
Not the aesthetic, not the visual. Surface, yeah.
Yeah, it's a doorway. It's an entry point to what's really there, to the inner life of that thing. And to me, that's what art. So, in theater, we have a body. Of course, there's these bodies on the stage. But what's really moving is accessing the inner life of that body, that story that's embodied in that actor or in that play, and getting at that, what's really there.
I love that's an exercise in theater. I mean, Charlie, you and I met doing theater years and years ago, but it's that whole, like, when you're workshopping and you're exercising and you're working your character and you're like, okay, I just came in the room from stage left. Where was I coming from? What was I just, and that's not often in the script.
No.
But again, as a AI in an example, all is I'm in the room. I walked in the room. There's no deeper backstory, right?
Unless you program it to have one, I guess, Yeah. No, and it is a great debate, and I've had lots of discussions with people over the months for sure. Can AI create art? Some people have argued it's better, like it creates better art. Like, can AI write a play? It sure can. Can AI paint a painting? Not paint a painting, but create a digital graphic painting. It sure can. Can it create
record a radio show? It sure can.
Can it create a piece of music that is moving or enjoyable to listen to? It sure can. Because music, of course, music in general. Like I'm a composer. I'm a musician. I like music. You are pulling from sources. You are pulling from an arrangement of notes that have been used before. You always are. And there's so much math and patterns in music. There's lots of patterns in the chords and the rhythms. It's a language. There's a reason why people call music a language, and they call math a language. A lot of people too, because there's patterns. There's a kind of a science to it as well as an art to it. Can AI do all those things? It certainly can, and it can write plays. And I'm not even here to say, and they're trash and not good.
Some of these radio stations are they sound great too.
Yeah. So
it's a hard one. Yeah,
it is a hard one. And then there's two definitions of art. Did it create art? Well, if we're using the definition of, like, did it create something that has aesthetic value that can, make people think or feel,
and it's pleasing to the senses,
then yes, it created art. But if we're going off of Tolstoy's description of what art is, the conveying of emotion from one soul to another, the transmission of emotions, it's not. Life. Then it's not art. It just kind of depends on what your definition of art is, right?
Yeah, of course, it depends on that. And we're making a case for art connects to those emotions, right? To feelings. Art shows us what feeling is. Feeling is. And it does it in a very unique kind of way that speaks to us as human beings, resonates with us as human beings, because in some fashion it's embodied, it's rooted in our bodies, and all that entails, our mind, our intelligence, our emotions, our soul, everything together.
Any thoughts on that one, Kara?
Yeah, no, just going back to that, it's reaching something that is part of our inner, created beings that we had when we were infants and we were dependent on humans, and we had these, like, I think, again, all this conversation, it goes right back to, this is how we've been created, is to have these kinds of connections. And are we going to miss that if we don't have real art, real human connection, real emotion, real love from another?
Right. Because emotion implies emotion, moving towards another. It's relational. At its very essence. Can a machine provide that? I don't think so. Not at this point.
And I like what you were saying about creativity, like kind of stemming back to childhood, and it's like So a creative adult, in a sense, is doing something very pure that they were created to do. I mean, children don't think twice about creating something, about playing around by using their imagination. Certainly, my childhood is riddled with like playing and making things up, and it's like you're destined to be in theater with that kind of childhood, really.
Until someone
Yeah.
comes along and squashes it or criticizes.
That's a lot of people's experiences. That they got that squashed out of them. And I've worked with many talented theater artists for sure who just, they hit 18 and they're just like, obviously there's no money in that. There's nothing, there's no future in that for me. And they just, they shut it off, and they go and they get the good job that pays, which again, nothing wrong with that, but they also don't ever return to the art that they love. They see it as a kid's thing, as something that kids do. And we would deal with that all the time at a theater company, right? And we have so much fun as adults playing around and goofing off and creating and thinking deeply, far more than I would, anywhere else. And it's very, very, very satisfying and meaningful. But I like what you said. I mean, the creative spirit being sort of a child one in a sense, because you have to be unencumbered. I don't care what people think. I'm going to do this.
I wonder if that childlike nature also lends to the idea or to the fact that it's hard to describe. Feelings are hard to talk about. We don't have a big vocabulary for them, just in the same way that children don't have a big vocabulary yet.
Good point. Yeah.
I have a theory that creating, whether it be creating community or creating any art, is like done out of a place of pain or need to reconcile or remedy something in life or within that is that's dissatisfying, that needs a voice, like that pain, pain, suffering, or even just dissatisfaction with how society is. I have this theory that art is created out of that, or anything is created out of that. Community can be created out of that something is lacking, something is missing. And like, that's such a human need to create, to remedy something, to make something right, to bring a sense of truth or justice to something that otherwise wouldn't get it. I don't know,
I mean, even as if you're a follower of Jesus, then even that we're born with a longing and a hole in our lives that can only be filled by God, not by a computer, right? So you're always going to feel that there's something missing, and so we're looking everywhere to solve that, whether it's like you said, community or art or relationship or Yeah.
You're familiar with Eric Liddell, the missionary Olympic
Yes.
athlete, who didn't run on the Sabbath out of his conviction. I mean, this is the movie Chariots of Fire.
Yeah.
And I remember being so inspired by that story when I was younger. And there's one quote particularly that just blew my mind. Well, why do you run? Why do you run? He's always running everywhere he goes, right? And I'm a runner, so I really related to this. He's running everywhere. So why do you do it? I think it was his wife didn't understand his drive, his need to run. What are you doing? What is this? We need help back here. We got missions work to do. What are you out there running for? He said, when I run, I feel God's pleasure. And I just, so relatable. When I create, I feel God's pleasure. When I'm in community with others, creating, developing, discussing important things, which we do, of course, with our Frankenstein A.I. Workshops. I mean, it's just the pleasure is wonderful, Yeah. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, guys, and I just want to maybe get your last words, final thoughts you want to leave the audience with who's listening. Just what are your sort of final thoughts on creativity, on AI, as a helper or hazard, as a friend or foe? What are some of the things you want us to just leave people with as we end this episode? George?
Yeah, I think I'm hoping that people that are listening to this will think more critically or deeply about how AI is proposing to become us and become our world. And right now we can't seem to refuse it. So much money is being poured into it. people might be aware of Trump's initiative, the Stargate initiative, pouring $500 billion into AI initiatives.
Wow.
I mean, over trillions of dollars are already being spent on this technology.
Wow.
And it seems to be foisted on us without a lot of debate or permission on the part of us who are going to use it. I just hope people will think a little more critically about what's happening around us with AI.
Thanks, George. Thanks for a beautiful discussion.
You're welcome. It's been very stimulating.
Indeed. And CARE, what are some final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I think the things that are really striking me the most, because I do see it in our industry, and I don't think it's always bad. I think there's tools, like we've talked about, that can certainly make things efficient so we can focus on maybe that more relational. The part that you described as the definition of art really is transferring really from one soul to another, emotion to another. So I guess my big kind of takeaway or encouragement is to not allow us to be conditioned by AI, to just keep creating, keep thinking, keep exploring, keep being curious, keep doing explorative workshops like Ninth Hour does, keep that childlike creativity and faith. I think that's something we just can't lose sight of.
Well said. Well said. Thanks, CARE. Thanks, CARE, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm your host, Charlie, and this was the Telling the Story podcast. This has been Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series discussing a brand new theatrical work, Frankenstein A.I. You can listen again to this episode and all our podcasts through YouTube, Spotify, and directly on our website, ninthhour.ca. Be sure to follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter to be the first to receive exciting announcements, opportunities, and behind-the-scenes content. We hope you'll join us again soon on Telling the Story.